and products are that are available to the back office of an organization, so not just in financial management, but in CRM, donor management, grant management. We're going to sort of touch on all of those. We're going to talk about risks and things that you should be aware of, and the as well as the benefits. So this is the implication side. Sorry, I'm having a problem with that word. And then, you know, if you do want to move to the cloud, how do you make it happen so that you can be successful and really use your dollars carefully? So, you know, what is the cloud? Everybody's always talking about the cloud, and we still have, as I mentioned earlier, our clients are coming and saying to us, you know, I'm hearing this product is in the cloud, and you know, we have to go back and say to them, oh, be careful, that's not really a cloud application. You're just sort of getting it to it. And so basically, there are actually three kind of things that you have to really think about when you're talking about the cloud. And basically, it's, you know, work that's being provided over the internet, resources that are being provided over the internet, but there's different ways that those resources are deployed. And the cloud is really about what is being deployed and how it's being deployed. And so, you know, we're going to talk about software as a service specifically, because that's when we talk about accounting systems or donor management systems or payroll, HR, expense management. That's really what we're talking about, that SaaS, software as a service. So in the deployment, you know, there are private clouds, so very large private companies, large corporations, for-profit corporations, they're actually setting up their own private clouds and virtual servers out in the cloud, and they have the wherewithal to do that. But most of us are going to be in the public cloud, so we're going to be working with a cloud solution and software, and we're still going to have some things that are in on-prem to our organization, and we're in that sort of transition period, and that's what we're calling a hybrid. So when you go to the cloud, your path is usually one of having a technology plan, that's very important, and then moving your applications in a, you know, planned process over to the cloud. So almost without exception, most of our clients are in some kind of hybrid environment like this. You've got your banking that you're doing, and it's online, so that's a cloud application. You know, there's one system gateway that's being utilized by, you know, the bank and all their customers to get to their accounts, and that's a true cloud application. We have, you know, payroll, ADP, for example, and you're getting into it through the cloud. And then the, you know, majority of our clients are still on-prem when it comes to their accounting systems. They're still on-prem, and that's probably the biggest area where we're seeing growth, is in that financial management area, as well as in the donor management, grant management, those particular areas. If you're a health center, health records is, you know, growing extremely rapidly. We have a lot of clients and organizations that are, you know, clinics, and so the cloud is becoming huge there. And now we're finally starting to see movement on the email and office productivity side, because Microsoft 365 has now been out for a little while. Google Docs and Google Apps has been out for a while, and so we're seeing many organizations moving over into those areas. So, you know, when we look at cloud, here again, we're going to really focus on the SaaS environment where, you know, this is really software that is 100% in the cloud. It was written for the cloud. The only way you can get to it is through, you know, your internet connection. There's no servers, there's no infrastructure. Everything is happening out in through the internet connectivity. And so we're really going to focus on that. And you might hear about, you know, infrastructure, like Rackspace is a huge player. And basically, they're taking the servers that you might have in your closets and your server rooms, and now they're handling it. And so that's the infrastructure side. So software as a service, you know, so basically what we're talking about here is all of those applications that are out there and that you're utilizing, whether it's your email, whether it's calendaring, spreadsheets, whether it's your accounting system, your payroll system, all of it's out in the cloud. You're accessing it through the internet, and you're not thinking about infrastructure at all. The servers, the operating systems, the storage, the backup, all of that is now off of your plate, and you don't have to be dealing with it any longer. And this is really, one of the biggest benefits here is that ability to take your dollars and be able to utilize them for your program and have a fixed cost for your overhead to ensure that your systems are always current. But, this is really key. So, so what does SaaS really mean? Because as I said, there's all these publishers out there, and all of them's talking about how they're in the cloud. And the real key thing here is, is it really a SaaS application, meaning that it is multi-tenancy. And basically what all that means is there's only one version of the software that everyone is using. And so multi-people using it, multi-tenancy, versus the on-premise environment, which is single tenancy, and hosted is also single tenancy. So you are owning your copy, and the hosting, it's out in the cloud, and you're getting to it through the cloud, but it's not multi. So if your version isn't kept up to date by whatever service you're being used, then you're going to fall behind. And your license is your license. It's not, even though it's being hosted somewhere else and it's out of your server room, it's still your license and your copy of the database. And so it's really a key piece to understand, because a lot of software publishers will say to you, yes, we're in the cloud, and they are, but they're not a true SaaS application. It's your version that's out in the cloud. So that's a really important distinction. So hosted versus SaaS, software as a service. So this slide basically encompasses, what's happening in the very things that I've been talking about. It talks about the application, it talks about the infrastructure, how the upgrades and updates happen. And here again, one of the big differences between a true cloud SaaS application and a hosted application is the SaaS applications, you're always on the latest and greatest version. So everyone here on the call, I'm sure, is familiar with Google, with Yahoo, with Amazon. There is only one version, and everyone that is accessing those sites is on the one version, and it's being updated behind the scenes, so it's always the latest and greatest version. It's always got all of the enhancements, and that's really a key differentiator. The investment and the product development that's happening in the SaaS environment is on a much faster pace. The other piece that's really key here is on security. As a general rule, when you're looking at a true SaaS application, I like to describe it as like military grade security. Almost without exception, most nonprofits cannot afford the level of security that is maintained in a SaaS environment. And you can sort of understand it, because a SaaS environment, they have to ensure the data for every one of their clients, every organization, every company, that their data is absolutely safe and secure, no downtime, no interruptions, no disaster issues with getting right back up, because everybody is relying on that system. And so it is a level of, monitoring and backup and recovery that just can't be maintained by the, typical 99% of nonprofit organizations or even for-profit organizations. The other big thing is on the cost, and a lot of times organizations will, say, well, I can't afford to pay an annual subscription. It's that once and done type of thing. But what ends up happening is you still have an ongoing cost with the hosted or on-prem applications that you have, because you're paying some kind of level of maintenance and support on an annual basis, which is usually averages about 23%. You're paying for the hosting service in some way, shape, or form, and you're also needing to ensure that, what's the investment being made on the product to keep that, latest and greatest enhancements and functionality that you're needing as the organization changes. The other piece that's really key here is cloud SaaS applications have really changed the pricing and cost structure from a capital expenditure, which for grant-funded organizations, all of that it has to be managed a certain way, to an operating expense, no different than rent or phone, that you are now able to, work within your budgets and your funders for this ongoing operating expense versus this capital expense that you have made, and maybe you only make once every 5 years because you don't have the funding for it. You don't have the funds available for it. So that's really key in terms of managing and understanding the costs of the applications. So when I look at cloud solutions, the key thing here is really understanding that they are anywhere, anyhow, anytime based. So, for example, you go into the internet, you're accessing the internet. SaaS applications don't care whether you're going through Internet Explorer, through Chrome, Google Chrome, through Mozilla Firefox, whether you're on a PC or a Mac. Basically, you're just getting to the internet because they are built for that environment. As I mentioned before, you're always on the latest version, so you're always getting the enhancements up to the moment. And this is really key. I always describe the cloud as the great equalizer for nonprofits, because I've been working with nonprofits almost 30 years, and historically, nonprofits have been 5 to 7 years behind when it comes to technology. I mean, we have organizations that are today on XP desktops still, because they don't have the funds to invest in keeping their infrastructure, equipment, and their software systems up to date. Those dollars are very important, and they need to be spent on the program. So they can't go out and spend, $40,000, $50,000 at a pop. And so what the cloud does is it equalizes all of that. It's an operating expense that every year what it's going to be, and you're not going to get those hits where the server goes down, or there's a flood, or there's malware, or there's other stuff that's going on. What the cost is, and that system is going to be up and running for you, and that all of the upgrades and enhancements are happening the way they should without you even thinking about it. So, when we talk about the implications for the not-for-profit environment, the really important ones are that predictability of cost, no different than, as I mentioned, your rent, your lease agreements, what you're facing. The quality of the infrastructure, so your equipment can be a $250 Chrome machine, because you don't need to have that, all of that investment in the desktops and in the servers and in the operating systems and all of that. it's also extremely easy to deploy these, because if you think about, like, going on to Amazon or Yahoo or one of those, you want to go and access the site, it's set up, it's running, and the same applies when you think about implementation for accounting systems or for expense management or any of these other systems. Getting them up and running is very straightforward. The systems are built because of this technology that exists today. I mentioned the anytime, anywhere accessibility and the reduced IT investment and interoperability. Basically, what I'm talking about there is the ability for information to be exchanged and collaborated across the organization. And so historically, and not just with nonprofits, but for-profits as well, we would have our on-prem applications, and there would be the finance system, and it didn't talk to the payroll system, and it didn't talk to the medical record system, and it didn't talk to the expense management system or the donor management system or the grant management, and there's all this manual crossing that's happening. And this is one of the other areas, because of the technology shift that's happened with the cloud, that has been alleviated and in many cases eliminated, because these applications talk to each other seamlessly. And that's a really huge benefit, because it allows an organization to have a much more holistic operation than the silos that we see. So, a lot of times I get asked by organizations, so, like, what's the checklist between what I have right now and what I'm using versus the cloud? How are they really different? So basically, when we talk about on-prem application or hosted application, so you have your initial license fee you're paying for when you originally purchase it, and that's usually a bit of money. And then you have your annual maintenance fee. You're having the investment for the IT infrastructure, remote access. You're either using Citrix or remote desktop. You have the firewalls. You're on IT support. You might have people on staff right within your organization, or you might be outsourcing this. And then disaster recovery, this is a huge component and is a whole, almost without exception, with most of our clients, where they have perhaps some level but not true, fully fleshed out disaster recovery. Well, basically the cloud collapses all of that and basically takes care of all of those components, and you're paying that subscription. And so, all of those things are happening, but they're into what your annual subscription is, and typically your subscription is based on the number of users that you have accessing the system. There's usually an annual subscription, but depending on the publisher, those payments might be made quarterly, they could be made monthly. There are all types of permutations that are available for managing that regular anticipated cost. So this slide, a lot of times organizations say, well, can you give me an idea of what I am looking at? Now, this particular example is talking about financial management. So basically, all we did here is we took, if you were to implement a new financial management system, and if you were to implement a SaaS system. So that's at year one. What would it cost you in year one to make it happen, and what would it cost you in the subsequent years to make it happen? And this assumes in the subsequent years, 2 to 4, this is assuming that your system is being maintained in terms of both the software maintenance and support and the hardware. And this is where the clients start to get into that 5 to 7 years behind, because they're not making the investment that they need to make in the systems, and so they fall further and further behind. But as I said, the SaaS environment really eliminates that aspect, because you don't have to worry about falling behind, because it's in the rent. You're going to pay rent. You want to have a roof over your head. You're going to pay rent, and so you're you're taking care of it. So now I want to talk about the implications of moving to the cloud. And when I look at implications, almost without exception, it's benefit after benefit. JMT, we first started evaluating the cloud for our clients 7 years ago in 2009. And at that time, if we talked to any client or anybody about the cloud, they would have looked at us, as if we were nuts, very truthfully. But I realized that this was coming. It was sort of like, people not thinking Windows was going to turn into anything, or thinking smartphones aren't going to become anything big. I looked at it and I saw the potential for what was going on and what could happen, and realized that this was going to be a game changer for nonprofits going forward. And it wasn't going to happen overnight, but it was going to happen. So in 2010, I made the decision strategically for JMT that we were going to become a cloud company. And what that meant was that we were going to move JMT into a cloud environment internally. And as time permitted, as our clients saw the value of it, we would be ready to support them. And so we created a technology, a 3-year technology plan, and it encompassed, across the company, our CRM, our accounting, our email, all aspects, project management, everything across the company. We laid out a technology plan, a timeline, what was going to happen first, who was going to be in charge of it, how we were going to go through the evaluation process. And, because I understood the value of what we were going to gain. And I knew the money issue was, that was the most easy aspect of it, because, we have servers at JMT. We have helped over 2,000 clients, and they're all on all different products and different versions of the different products. And our servers, we had 17 servers in our server room to support all of these different applications. And replacing servers, we had a server budget every year, which reinvested in infrastructure. So we understood what we were going to be doing in terms of saving time, money, and the environment. And the environment, the energy, our energy bills, you don't think about these things, but our energy bills, for these 17 servers, for the AC, for the staff that we had to maintain these systems, paper processes that we had. It was all of these pieces that we saved on. Of course, there was the convenience of it now, because we have team members across the country, and so now our team members can access any of our systems from anywhere. So, for example, one of the biggest pains for our clients is expense management, credit card management. And we were no different, Everybody has company credit cards, and so we had Excel, expense reimbursement forms. We had the reconciliation with the credit cards. We went through all these pains, and we wanted to change that around and get rid of these paper processes, empower our clients, free up our staff to be able to do the important things that they needed to do without having to spend time in all these manual processes, in these manual workflows and approvals and all of this. What we got from that was the flexibility when we want to roll out things, we want to communicate things, when we're adding personnel, when personnel are coming off, we were able to manage all of that so much better. And then, of course, we went to paperless environment. Everything is stored in the cloud. And so now, and visible, so that we don't have 7 copies of something because we have 7 departments. We have 1 copy. We have visibility through security for people to be able to see it. We have the ability to put notes so it's visible. We collaborate. Everybody can get visibility to decisions that are made. And then, of course, the security, everybody knows, if you're from New York, Hurricane Sandy, we were bombarded in that, but we weren't impacted at JMT, even though we couldn't come into the office. We had no power at the office. Everyone was able to work from their homes. So we had all of these benefits that we realized, and these are all the same things that our clients realize and, are realizing now. So, this was back in 2010 when we started this process. At that time, we started to have conversations with our clients about the cloud, and there really wasn't too much interest. And now, every single organization that we're in front of, the very first thing they ask about is, well, is this in the cloud? So in that short amount of time, this shift has happened. And of course, then we go into really helping to have line of sight into what does the cloud mean to them versus, what we're talking about here, because everybody's talking about the cloud. Now, if someone asked me what the biggest implication might be within an organization, I would say, for my viewpoint, it really is innovation, and that's the reason why this is here. Now, this particular slide is talking about innovation at the product, these solutions, the product levels, but I'm actually talking about innovation that occurs at your organization, because when your team members, and we've realized this at JMT, when your team members are not spending time in the weeds, and that doesn't matter whether it's a finance team, if it's your development team, if it's your program managers and program directors, if they have visibility to information in a format that they need, and they can collaborate much easier, it is amazing what opens up within the organization, because now everyone's thinking becomes much more expanded. And so that's really what I believe is the greatest implication for organizations. As I mentioned before, it's a great equalizer because now organizations are able to get the same kind of functionality and feature set and benefits that, very large organizations get. So our $10 million clients can have the same benefits that our $300 million annual operating budget clients have, because it's the same tool. And, and they're only paying based on the number of users they have, but all the features and functionality are there and available to them. And that's what I mean by the great equalizer. Intangibles, and this is sort of along the lines of, what I said about innovation, your team members can really focus on what is really vitally important to your organization achieving your mission, versus actually spending time on workarounds or tracking down pieces of paper or trying to communicate or get responses back. Your ability to really collaborate within your organization is huge. And, here we're just talking about like webinars and videos and Skype. A lot of our clients, all of their meetings are done through Skype and, video meetings. So even if it's just a quick call, they're making that happen. And because this innovation is happening with the cloud, these updates are happening so regularly with the cloud, there's an element of continuous learning that's going on, because now these feature sets are coming forward, these new things, and our clients, we're spending time communicating with our clients about, here's a new feature and here's some ideas about how to use it. And it's like a light bulb going off saying, oh my gosh, we could do X, Y, and Z with this. And so that's that, continuous learning benefit as well. So, these are actual things that clients have, shared with us in terms of their systems and what they've really gained. I mentioned the collaboration and visibility. That's probably the, hands down the biggest one. We look at a finance department as the hub of the organization when it comes to operational, back office. And we look at finance as the hub, and all of the systems and collaboration and everything, all the other tools are basically the spokes of the wheel, if you will. And so we look at dashboards as really key for the finance team to be able to provide to all of the constituencies within an organization, and even with outside of the organization, funders, CPAs, board members, information that is real-time, but also in a format that the recipient, the reader, can relate to. And, the paradigm shift that's really happened because of technology and this, impact is that historically it was, this is our system, and it's our debits and credits, and we get these reports off, and it's in this format, and this is what we're sending to you. And there could certainly be a time lag between, by the time we reconcile, by the time we do this or that, we get the information to you. And so many program managers and directors I would hear from, the program managers and directors saying, I get that information and it's 30, 45, 60 days late, sometimes even longer than that. It really is worthless to me, so I don't even look at it. I'm working with today and the current things, and that information would have been great 60 days ago, but it doesn't help me now because I'm working today. And that's the shift that's happened. And what the cloud is really helping organizations to do is to be able to have that real-time visibility in a format that is easy to make happen and that resonates with the reader. So it's reader-focused versus system-designed. And it really is a paradigm shift. It provides a lot more collaboration. Now, a lot of organizations, what are the implications of that for the organization? For the finance team, for example. Well, the implication for the finance team, part of it is education, both to the organization as a whole and the finance team. When you have real-time information, you're not waiting until, quote unquote, the books are closed. It's real time. So the education component becomes helping all the constituencies within the organization to understand that this is real time. And so it is changing up to the moment. So when payroll happens, now payroll is going to roll through, and now it's going to have the payroll number. But it didn't have the payroll number yesterday, but it's going to have it today. So it's part of an education process. And a lot of times when I talk to organizations, they will, say, oh, that wouldn't work at our organization. But actually what I found is the opposite is true. When that communication and education happens with the non-finance people within an organization, and they understand what they're getting and why they're getting it and what it reflects, they are totally fine. They understand it, and they totally are fine with it because they have the visibility. And that's really a key component. So, is it all benefits? I would, it would be a falsehood if I said it was all benefits and there's no issues to working in the cloud. There's no potential negative implications working in the cloud. First and foremost, you have to have connectivity, right? You got to be able to get to the internet. Now, the good news is, if your office was down, you could go down to the local Starbucks or go home or go, wherever and get into that connectivity, and you're back up and running. So, but you have to have connectivity, and that's really key. And it can't be slow, sloggy connectivity. You have to be able to get to it. Service levels and response time. Now here again, it's very important to understand who you're working with when it comes to the cloud and the applications, because this is no different than if you bought on-prem or hosted. This is the same for all of them. You really want to ensure that you're working with somebody who's reputable, who understands what's going on, who's responsive, and who is doing all the things that they say they're going to do. They're available, all of that. One of the other key points is I always tell clients when we're evaluating solutions for our clients, one of the key things for us is ensuring that our clients own the data. It is absolutely their data. If they decide tomorrow to discontinue service, can they get their data? And equally important, how do they get it? Is it in a format that they can use and bring over to something else? And so those are two pieces that are really key. The other one, and I put it last, but it's certainly the most important, and doesn't matter whether you're where your systems are located, is security, and it's always a prime concern. And here again, you want to ensure that whoever you're working with, those systems have the right certifications, in place and current, and they should be front and center for you to be able to look at. So if you wanted to think about moving to the cloud, how do you do it? What do you look at? What tells you that you should potentially be looking at something right now? And basically, I always tell clients, you really want to start looking at your current systems. You could do similar to like what JMT did, which you want to create a technology plan. And typically, organizations, they'll start with email and collaboration, so moving to Microsoft 365 or Google. And a lot of organizations we're talking to, they've actually, even though they didn't have a quote-unquote technology plan, they've actually started the process and they've done that first piece, which is collaboration. But when we look at any of your other back office systems, whether it's accounting or donor management or records management or whatever it might be, you really want to look at what I call the paper and pencil processes, and that, your Excels. You really want to understand how are your processes and how does information and paper move through your organization. And and that includes, taking information from one system and how it gets into the other, how long it takes you to do things, what do you find yourself spending a lot of time on in terms of in a reactive mode. You want to look at all of those things. I mentioned about the cloud strategy, and this presentation will be made available to you, so you can, look at this in detail. I'm not going to spend a lot of time here. But, basically it's really having an understanding of what your current processes are and what they're in place. We have at JMT a process called internal business process review, and that's so we can understand what the paper flow is, the processes are in an organization, and how we can address them, streamline them, automate them, and, what systems do we need to do that. You really need to, when you're looking at any of these cloud solutions, you need to understand what the subscription model is and the pricing on it, who implements the service. This particular piece here is no different than, on the on-prem. The publishers will all sell you the subscription or the solution, and they'll all implement it. They all have services for implementation of any of these solutions, and that's no different than it's ever been the case with whenever you buy any kind of software tools. I am a huge proponent of not going through the publisher, primarily because With the publisher, it's usually one size fits all. They are always going to tell you their solution is the best and it can do something, and when they implement it, they are going to, typically they're implementing in a single model, because, you know, one size fits all type of thing, and they're not taking enough time out to really understand an organization's needs, and that's because they're not in the business of implementing. It's a service they're offering, but that's not their business. Their business is the product. And the other piece that's really key to understand is the scope of work that's involved in the implementation. I am, having sat on the other side, being a CFO and controller for a number of organizations, implemented, you know, 4 different systems, and was ignorant of a lot of the questions that needed to be asked. You know, if you don't know what to ask, how can you ask it? And so the scope of work I was good. I thought I was fabulous. I had a documented scope of work document that I signed and they signed, but I didn't know what holes were in that document. So when it came back and they said, well, we don't do that, that's the service that you do, and I was like, okay, so now really understanding what the scope of work is, what it means, and the cost for it is really huge, because you might get a scope of work and it's $100 here, and you get a scope of work from somewhere else and it's $300 there. You really want to understand and do a comparison apples to apples. Also very important is your information. How do you move it? How is it going to get over to your system? What's going to be brought over? A lot of times publishers and people will tell you they're not bringing anything over, so there'll be a quote-unquote data conversion. You want to understand what the cost is. And then, of course, when you're huge implication, and here again, it doesn't matter whether you're going to a cloud technology or some other technology, is the ongoing support that's provided. Here again, on the other side of the table, experienced myself what I came to call the dump and run, which was basically I got my software, I got my training and implementation, I got 60 days of support, and then I was on my own, and I was not in a good place. So you really want to have a very good understanding of what support is provided, how long it's provided, who's providing it, what's the cost, is it ongoing, all of those kind of great things. Doesn't matter what kind of software you're looking at, you really want to understand that. So cloud applications, they all have what they call a EULA, and that's E-U-L-A or SLA, Service Level Agreement. One end user agreement or service level agreement. And so you really want to understand what's the service that's going to be provided by the publisher, the vendor. And here again, this crosses all cloud systems, and you want to understand uptime. And the really reputable cloud publishers will have their uptime front and center right on their website, and they'll be tracking it, almost live, and you want to see that. Of course, the disaster recovery, you want to understand what the disaster recovery process is and how they follow it. Communications, how they, communicating. So like if you're probably seen on with your online bank accounts, you go in, you may get a message that comes up saying, system will be down from 3 a.m. to 5 a.m. for system maintenance. Well, that's what we're talking about when we talk about regular communication on planned shutdowns. And the same thing should happen with new features. You don't want to, come in one day and the solution is changed and you can't find your stuff because they did a big change and there was no communication coming out around it. So that's really important. And I mentioned about who owns the data and the response times. Really key, here again, you want your technology plan. So you want to understand what are the applications your organization is using across the entire organization and how they'll interact, how you can streamline and integrate them so that, here again, we go to this holistic communication collaboration environment versus that silo where there's data here and there's data there and so much. Also, what's spent in terms of currently maintaining information, so that goes away. So what's your gain there? Data losses, how do you ensure that you, especially if you're doing the conversion, bringing data over, what's the plan there? Accessibility, hugely important. So, you might have remote locations, people traveling, so you need that. And then, of course, you need to understand compliance. And really and truly, these are commonplace now, like HIPAA and PCI is two examples. They're, almost all of the softwares know that that has to be in place, and it's just a requirement. So here again, that technology plan, these are the common areas that we tell organizations to really understand. You got your fund accounting, ERP, your donor management, budget and planning, other applications such as expense management tools, things like that, HR, and, email, general productivity. So let's actually look at some systems. So right now there are 3-4 main players in the cloud on the financial side. They are Financial Edge, Blackbaud's Financial Edge. They have their cloud version. Now this is a legacy on-prem application, and they have released their cloud version, and that's Financial Edge Next. And so that is a product that's still out there. Financial Edge is still keeping forward with that. Another leader in the market is Avila MIP, and so the same thing, Avila legacy, MIP legacy system that's been out there for a long time, workhorse product, and they likewise recognize where technology is headed, and so they've created their cloud application, Avila MIP Advanced. Then we have Intacct Cloud Financials. Intacct is a true SaaS application, multi-tenant environment written from the ground up, and it is made to really look at financial management from both a dollar environment but also a statistical environment. So you'll see, like on this slide, there's patients served, office visits. The whole idea, philosophy behind Intacct's financial management is that financial management is not just about dollars, it's about statistical information as well. And then NetSuite is the other true 100% cloud SaaS application, the competitor to Intacct. They don't have nonprofits as a focus in the past. And they're also, but they're basically a suite environment. And then we have what I call partly cloudy, and there's a spelling error there. And so we have our legacy systems, the Dynamics, Great Plains, Solomon's, regular QuickBooks, and they're not fund accounting in any way, shape, or form, although there's a lot of organizations where they've been implemented and sort of workarounds have been created in the design so that those organizations are using them. There are other legacy players that are hosted. So they are creating their tool, but it's in a hosted environment. And these are pretty, many of these you probably recognize the name. And then there's some cloud apps that are true cloud SaaS applications, but they have limited fund accounting functionality, and that's the two big ones there right now are Acumatica and QuickBooks Online. And then you really want to think about best of breed or suite, and basically the difference here is suite is they have everything, CRM, payroll, HR, everything you could imagine. And then best of breed is I'm a core financial system and I'm letting the HR or the CRM and I'm talking to those systems. JMT recommends a best of breed philosophy because we really, you can't be all things to everybody. And we follow the philosophy, you really need to be experts and understand what's needed and make the investment in a key area. So we follow best of breed. If we want an HR system, we're not going to have HR through a suite. We want an HR system that we know that can meet it. You really want to understand, especially if you're looking at a financial system, your chart of accounts, the linear versus table-driven, the fund accounting, being able to get all your reports out of the system, all of that great information as well. And then expense management, that's a great place to start to introduce a cloud application, because most of the automation there can happen, and they typically can interface with your current system. So that's a great place to sort of get familiar with cloud applications, and can be a huge time saving. Budgets is also another huge area that can standalone tool that can interface with pretty much usually any ERP system, and provide that collaboration that everyone is typically doing in Excel right now. And when you're thinking about any kind of transition, there's a timeline. So here, this is like an example. Cloud applications typically can happen within 4 months from start to finish, 16 weeks. So these timelines are based on our experience working with so many nonprofits, our clients. But depending on we have some organizations that get up and running in absolutely within the 16 weeks. It really depends on the organization and the resources of the organization. So if there is any questions, I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. You could chat me the questions, and I am available to answer them. As I mentioned, you will get the presentation, and you definitely want to check our website to get information on other sessions that we're holding over the next few months to the end of the year. So, any questions? If you have a question, you can, as I said, feel free to use the chat area. Okay, well, I appreciate my contact information, which is, it's great, I don't have it on this slide. My contact information is jtiso@jmtconsulting.com. So basically my last name there, jtiso@jmtconsulting.com. You can also reach out through our website with any questions you might have, and any insight that we can provide or help you with in any way. We'll be very happy to do so. And our phone number is 888-368-2463. Thank you very much, and I look forward to having conversations or email exchanges with anyone who would like to reach out. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.